Ladies and gentlemen, meet Jennifer Rawlings.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Women's eNews, and thank you, Rita. Yay. Okay, so like you said, I've been going to war zones for the last, well, I always say 10 years, but what's really sad is it's been over 12 years now, because I didn't know when we set down this path that it was going to be year after year and war after war after war. I've been to Iraq, Afghanistan, Bosnia, Kosovo, Djibouti, all sorts of countries I cannot spell. I went to Haiti after the earthquake, and while it started off for me going to go tell jokes to the troops and to the soldiers, what I never realized was how that experience was going to transform my life. And after being to 63 countries, one day I was in Los Angeles reading the Los Angeles Times, but Jill, I also read the New York Times every day too. And as I'm reading in the paper, I read this article, and she was sharing with the journalist. It was this woman for Darfur, where the conflict has been going on there for decades, and her child was starving to death. And she said, if the fighting would end, I could feed my family again, and my life would go back to normal. And when I read that sentence, that was my aha moment, because I realized that I knew something that this woman didn't. That her life was going to continue to get worse, because long after the last bullet is fired, wars continue to destroy lives. So as I'm reading this, I'm crying, and my teenage daughter looks at me and she goes, "What are you crying about, Mom?" I'm like, "Oh, it's just so sad what goes on in the world and how people suffer." And then she goes, "Well, what are you going to do about it?" I know! So that's how I wound up making this film, Forgotten Voices, Women in Bosnia, that deals with women in the aftermath of war. And I'm just going to share one quick little thing with you. And the reason I share these stories, both in my film and in my theater show, both funny and sad, I met this woman, Emma, an absolutely gorgeous woman. And like so many of the women I met, she talked about what it was like to go 4 years without electricity and gas and running water, without toothpaste or soap or shampoo. And then she told me the things that women have to do when they are in that circumstance, things that are normally that of a man, in Bosnia anyway, including using a gun. So I said to her, "Did you ever use a gun?" And she looked at me and she said, "Yeah, I learned how to use a gun real well. My father would leave the house and he'd give me a gun with 3 bullets in it. And he said, if the enemy comes to the door, you're to kill your mother, your sister, and yourself." And then Emma said to me, "I'd lay awake at night and worry. Who to kill first? Is it worse to have my mother see my sister die, or to have my sister see my mother die? And what if I miss? Will it be painful for them or not?" And those stories and women like Emma changed my life. And so my goal is to continue to share stories, because I do believe that we can have, when you hear the news in Syria or whatever conflict there is that week, there is an Emma there, and she needs our help. And we can change the world one person at a time, one story at a time, and one conversation at a time.